It is September 15th, 2016. This is the Watchman News, and I'm Mike Callahan. I'm going to be showing you a couple of stories, and I kind of combine the two, and I'm titling this video, "It's Mandatory for the Cops to Kill People Like This 13-Year-Old." I'm going to show you what happens if an officer chooses not to kill. I mean, I see these stories and I'm shocked. I'm beyond shocked. Okay, so let's first talk about the 13-year-old. That article from RT, both articles I'm doing I will link in the description tab. This is titled, "Ohio Cops Shoots Dead 13-Year-Old Boy After He Pulls BB Gun." Okay, and it goes as, 13-year-old boy was shot dead by an Ohio police officer after he allegedly pulled a gun while being placed under arrest. The weapon was later confirmed to be a BB gun. Columbus Police Department, Ohio, was responding to a report of an armed robbery when the incident occurred. The robbery victim told police that they had been approached by a group of people demanding money and one of them had a gun. Officers said they saw 3 suspects fitting their description and approached them. 2 of the suspects fled on foot while officers tried to arrest the 3rd suspect, identified as 13-year-old Tyree King. Officers followed the males to the alley and attempted to take them into custody when one suspect pulled a gun from his waistband, police said in a statement early Thursday. One officer shot and struck the suspect multiple times. The boy was taken to Nationwide Children's Hospital, where he was later pronounced dead Wednesday evening. Columbus police identified Officer Brian Mason, a 9-year veteran, as responsible for the shooting death of the teenager Tyree King, according to WSYX. Another suspect who was with King was later taken into custody and released pending further investigation. Police said they were looking for additional suspects. No officers were injured in the incident. It was later determined by detectives that King's suspected firearm was a BB gun with an attached laser scope. The officer who opened fire has been with the force for 9 years, according to WKYC. Police said the incident is under investigation. In November 2014, Cleveland Police Department shot dead 12-year-old African-American boy Tamir Rice, who was in possession of a gun which later turned out to be an airsoft replica. Earlier this year, the city of Cleveland was ordered to pay $6 million to the family of Rice. Police killings of African Americans have sparked more widespread protests across the U.S. in recent months, following the high-profile killings of Philando Castile and Alton Sterling. So, okay, we could sit here and argue all day and all night as to whether or not they should have taken the action that they did. Okay, 13-year-old carrying a firearm with a laser on, or what appeared to be a firearm with a laser on it. Yeah, we could debate that until the cows come home and still be debating it. Here's my only debate with it, okay? Why multiple times? I'm telling you, you get shot, you're not going to quite feel too good. I don't understand why multiple times. That's my whole issue with many of these police shootings, is they are just absolutely unloading the magazine in a lot of the cases. And that to me, that's insane. Now, if you were to do that as a homeowner and you had somebody come into your home and you felt threatened with your life and you unload your magazine in them, some states you're going to jail. I want to say Illinois, if I'm not 110% positive, but I think in Illinois, you could shoot the guy 8 times, and if he lives, you're okay. You know, somebody breaking into your home, threatening your life. But if you shoot him, I think it is twice, and he dies, they say, the last I knew, they say that's murder. So this is crazy, to say the least. But the craziest part of this report I'm about to go into. Weirton, which is a town in West Virginia, terminates officer who did not fire at man with gun. Now, I'm not debating whether or not it was right to defend yourself against this gentleman, because obviously he had a gun, but hang on here. After responding to a report of a domestic incident on May 6 in Weirton, West Virginia, the Weirton police officer Stephen Mader found himself confronting an armed man. Immediately, the training he had undergone as a Marine to look at the whole person in deciding if someone was a terrorist, as well as his situational police academy training, kicked in, and he did not shoot. I saw then he had a gun, but it was not pointed at me, Mr. Mader recalled, noting that the silver handgun was in the man's right hand, hanging at his side and pointed at the ground. The man was Ronald D. R.J. Williams, Jr., 23, of Pittsburgh, and what happened in the seconds after Mr. Mader's initial decision is still being investigated by Mr. Williams' family as well as the West Virginia Civil Liberties Union. Mr. Mader, who was standing behind Mr. Williams' car parked on the street, said he then began to use my calm voice. I told him, put down the gun, and he's like, just shoot me. And I told him, I'm not going to shoot you, brother. Then he starts flicking his wrists to get me to react to it. I thought I was going to be able to talk to him and de-escalate it. I knew it was a suicide by cop situation. But just then, 2 other Weirton officers arrived on the scene. Mr. Williams walked toward them, waving his gun, later found to be unloaded. Between them and Mr. Mader, and one of them shot Mr. Williams in the back of the head just behind his right ear, killing him. A month-long West Virginia State Police investigation later concluded the shooting was justified. A decision in the Hancock County, West Virginia prosecutor Jim Davis announced at the news conference on June 8th. But a case that has been handled by local law enforcement from the first day on with some peculiar twists, failing to publicly name Mr. William for 3 days, the assignment of an investigator who left for a week-long vacation the next day, and tension with Mr. Williams' family only got more peculiar. Mr. Mader, speaking publicly about this case for the first time, said that when he tried to return to work on May 17th, following normal protocol for taking time off after an officer-involved shooting, he was told to go see Weirton Police Chief Rob Alexander. In a meeting with the chief and city manager Travis Blosser, Mr. Mader said Chief Alexander told him, "We're putting you on administrative leave, and we're going to do an investigation to see if you're going to be an officer here. You put 2 other officers in danger." Mr. Mader said that right then I said to him, "Look, I didn't shoot him because he said, 'Just shoot me.'" On June 7th, a Weirton officer delivered him a notice of termination letter dated June 6th, which said by not shooting Mr. Williams, he failed to eliminate a threat. You hearing this, folks? The notice of termination included 2 other incidents in which the city believed Mr. Mader acted improperly. An incident in April where neither he nor 2 other more experienced officers, the same 2 who were involved in the Williams case, reported the suspicious death of an elderly woman who appeared to have had a stroke and fallen in her home, though no one had been charged in her death, and an incident in March when a woman complained that Mr. Mader was rude and swore at her when she asked why her husband was being arrested for disorderly conduct over receiving a parking ticket. Mr. Mater believes he was not at fault in either situation, and he was never given an opportunity to clarify what happened in each case. The city held a termination hearing on June 29th to approve the decision, but a frustrated Mr. Mater did not attend the hearing. When he read stories a day after he got his termination letter about how Chief Alexander said in the June 8th press conference that all 3 officers were back at work and doing well, Mr. Mater was incensed. "How can you say all the officers are doing well when you just terminated one yesterday?" Mr. Mater said in a recent interview. "I think he did that just to give the public a good view of the officers." As for why he was fired, Mr. Mater said it seemed obvious to him why that was done. "Firing me for it's less of an eyebrow raiser than to say the other officers are justified in what they did, which I think they were." While the chief told reporters and Mr. Williams' family in a private meeting with them a week later that all 3 officers were back to work is not known. Neither Chief Alexander, Mr. Bloster, nor Mr. Davis returned calls seeking comment. The Post-Gazette was told to contact City Hall, an attorney an attorney representing the city, but Mr. Hill did not return repeated voicemail messages and emails. As a former officer, Mr. Mater is all too aware of the interest this case may have for those on either side of the ongoing controversy over the shootings of black men by white officers across the country. Mr. Mater is white and Mr. Williams was black, but Mr. Mater said the other 2 officers, who were also white, did the right thing given their situation. "They did not have the information I did," he said. "They did not know anything I heard. All they know is Mr. Williams is waving a gun at them. It's a shame it happened the way it did, but I don't think they did anything wrong." As for Chief Alexander, "I was like, Chief Alexander was a good guy, and the next second he's throwing me under the bus," he said. Jack Dolans, an attorney for the Williams family, said that how and why Mr. Mater was fired is pretty clear evidence of their policy, and that the way they feel the shooting of Mr. Williams should have been handled. Not only do they think he should have been shot and killed, but shot and killed more quickly. Mr. Mater, 25, thought his hiring by the city in July of 2015 in a job that would pay him about $34,000 in the first year would turn out to be a good move for him, his young family, and the city. He grew up in Weirton, graduated from the Weir High School, married his high school sweetheart 5 years ago, and was raising 2 small boys, now ages 4 and 1, in the city when he got the job after serving for 4 years with the Marines, including a tour in Afghanistan. "I was definitely excited," he said, recalling the swearing-in ceremony. "It was the challenge. I like challenges. That's the reason I joined the Marines, because they said it was the hardest branch to be in, and I was excited because it was a better opportunity for my family, and I was getting a chance to be an officer in the town I grew up in." He is now going to school to get his commercial license to drive trucks, but he said he'd consider going back into law enforcement if a job came up. After he received his termination notice, Mr. Mater sought attorneys to help him fight the city. He was told because he was still a probationary employee in an at-will state, he could be fired for any reason, and there was no point in fighting the city. Gotta love that. Right to work and at-will, neither one are any good, and I went into that in another video. Anyway, one attorney told him the best he could hope for was to ask to resign instead of being terminated. But I told the attorney, "Look, I don't want to admit guilt. I'll take the termination instead of the resignation because I didn't do anything wrong," Mr. Mater said. "To resign, and I admit I did something wrong here, would have aided me. I think I'm right in what I did. I'll take it to the grave." So anyway, we'll also leave the link to that story down in the description tab. It's crazy. I mean, that's pretty much saying it right out, just blunt. That's something we need to talk about.